Hello there, welcome everybody to our QuickBooks webinar today. We've got Jacob from QuickBooks with us, and he's going to take us through some of the details on the mobile app. First of all, a quick overview of that, and then through how to connect bank feeds, invoicing on the go, and some of the bits and bobs. So I'll pass over to Jacob because we've got lots to get through.
Brilliant, thanks Paul. Hi everyone, and welcome to the second in our series of QuickBooks webinars alongside Wren. Thank you all for joining. Again, don't worry if we breeze through this at quite a pace. You will have an opportunity to get a recording after the webinar. We'll also send you through some step-by-step guides that you can use as well. As always, if you haven't joined the platform before, on the right-hand side, we've got the chat box. Please let us know of any technical issues, you can't hear or see us or anything like that. If you scroll down slightly below the screen, you've got three tabs. You've got questions. That's where you can write any questions throughout. I'm also happy for you to write them in the chat box. Feel free to ask anything related to what we're talking about. And next to questions, we've also got a polls tab as well. So just some information as you're filling it through. Have you ever used the QuickBooks mobile app before? There's some other questions in there. That feedback's really, really helpful. And it's also useful as we understand the audience for the webinar. As Paul mentioned, we've got quite a few things to go through today. I will do a recap for those who weren't in attendance the last webinar of the mobile app and the functionality with that. We'll be covering how to connect to bank feed and why they're so important in QuickBooks. We'll be looking at how to create bank rules, and we'll also look at invoicing on the go, so sending invoices, and actually how to get paid faster. That's really, really important at the moment. And if we have time, we'll have some dedicated Q&A time, but I will look to answer any questions as we go through the webinar as well. So without further ado, I will open up the app. Now, don't worry, you'll only be able to see that. You won't be able to see Paul or myself anymore, but hopefully you can all still hear us. Okay, so just really quickly, I think the really good question here is, why are we focusing on the app? And as I mentioned in a previous webinar, this is all about helping your businesses become more efficient. I think that's really, really important. We're looking for you to help things. I guess things become a little bit easier. So the app is really user friendly. We've developed a lot of time into it. It's all about being quick and easy to use. I think a stat that's really, really important on this is that we know that small businesses spend approximately 1/3 of their time every year on admin, and that's creating invoices, estimates, sending them, tasks like that. And that's around 120 days per calendar year. So the app is a way of being able to control your business on the go, okay, as well as being able to use the online software as well. Okay, so if you do have time, please do scroll down just below the screen, go to the polls tab, and do let us know, have you ever used the QuickBooks mobile app before? What I'll do is I will take you through the app today, showing you a few quick features and giving you some opportunities to understand a little bit more about what we're offering in this app. So the app has a rating. Typical, it's just gone as I was about to show you. Please hold. This is the benefit of working with technology at the moment. Apologies on that. I'm going to have to restart the phone. So let me tell you a little bit about the app while we're waiting. The QuickBooks mobile app has a rating of 4.7 out of 5 on the two major app stores. That's Google Play and the Apple App Store as well. And there are actually 3 flavors of this app. We call them flavors. You've got the Android version, you've got the iPhone version, and you've got the iPad version. The one I'll be showing you today, once my phone restarts, is going to be the iPhone version on there. Now, they all have the exact same functionality. The major difference on there is just the slight visual differences, and it really comes down to a preference. Of course, everyone has either an iPhone or an Android, but also what we've got as well is the iPad version as well. Okay, just getting that loaded up for you. Okay, please hold. Bear with me, I'll sort that out. So With the iPad version, you've got a much bigger screen. It's much more simple to use. With the Android and the iPhone versions, there are very, very similar pieces of functionality on there. Please hold me just a second while I get this loaded up for us. Apologies for the delay on this. Okay, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through the iPhone version of it, and we'll start onto that. Great. Okay, we're up and running. Sorry about the delay on that. Okay, so this is the iPhone version. Now, you'll notice at the top, you've got two sides to it. You've got the dashboard and you've got the activity. The dashboard piece on here is really, really great. This is going to give you a snapshot of your business based upon the information that you've got in QuickBooks. And this would be information you put in through the app. This is information that you put in through the QuickBooks online software. Okay. And the first thing I can see on here is my profit and loss. So my P&L, how much money have I made? How much money have I been paid? This is looking at the last 30 days, but in that top right-hand corner, if I select where it says last 30 days, I'm going to get a different time period on there. So I could choose, for example, this quarter, and it's going to give me a different insight into my P&L. I can click into that as well. I can click view profit and loss, and I'm going to see different graphs, and I can view a report at the bottom based upon the income and expenses that I have for my business. And again, that income is going to be, your bank transactions. The expenses are going to be expenses that you've raised. You can get all of that information into QuickBooks. Underneath that, you've got invoices, and this is something we're going to be tapping onto today. You've got invoices that have been paid or those that are still outstanding. We can get a really quick snapshot there, and we can also click into it and get a better insight as well. So I can see on here, for example, I've got that lots of invoices overdue. If I actually look at the Roy Fisher one, it's overdue by 48 days, and I can see that invoice has been sent, but it hasn't been viewed. And that is something that, I can't, when I speak to Roy, he hasn't seen it. So I need to get on the phone to him or send him an email and say, Roy, you haven't viewed the invoice. It needs to be paid. As an example of what it looks like on the other end of the spectrum, this is an invoice that has been sent, it's been viewed, and it has been paid. The only thing I haven't done is deposit it, and I can do that at a later stage. But we'll go into that in a little bit more detail a little bit further on. Underneath invoices, we've got expenses, very similar to the profit and loss. I'm able to change the time period on here. So at the moment, in the top right-hand corner, I've got this year, but I could change it to the last quarter. I could change it to the last 30 days and, just see what's going on there. I haven't got loads of expenses, but I can click into that and I can see what I've got that make up those expenses on there. And finally, below that, I've got my account balances. These are your real-time information of all the bank accounts we've got connected in QuickBooks. This is what we're going to be covering today when we're looking at bank fees and why it's so important. But this is real-time information. The time on the clock is 2:13 at the moment. Those account balances are up to date as of 2:10. So it's really up to date. I'm getting that live feed coming through, and it is accurate as well. So we go back up to the top, we've got dashboard, which is what we're on now. In the top right, we've got activity. Give that a click. And we can see all of the recent activity in QuickBooks. And this, again, is information that we've done in the app. It's information that we've put into the QuickBooks Online. And you know what? It's just a really good way, if you're on the go, sort of reminding myself, have I sent that invoice? Has it been paid? That sort of thing. That's really, really useful on there. Okay. At the bottom, I've got three buttons. In the bottom left, I've got the home button. And I've also got the plus button at the bottom there. And the plus button is going to give me quick access to features that I'm going to be using on a regular basis. So again, we're going to be looking today about raising an estimate or an invoice, receiving an invoice payment, raising a sales receipt, an expense, a mileage trip, or maybe a receipt capture. We covered those last two in the last webinar if you haven't seen them already. Finally, in the bottom right, we've got the three lines, also known as the burger button. So if you give that a click, it's going to give you, similar to the plus button, shortcuts are features you're going to be using on a regular basis. So this is more of a visual demonstration, but you've got things like, the transactions in the top left. That's going to take us to our bank accounts. We've got our cash flow planner. This is a new feature, 30 days and 90-day cash flow planner, cash flow planning based upon the information you've got in QuickBooks. You can create a customer, you can raise an invoice, you can raise a sales receipt, raise an expense. You've got the receipt snap and the mileage. If you go to all at the top, you've got a full list of all the functionality in the app. And the app isn't there, again, to replace QuickBooks Online. It's only there to assist and make you more efficient in how you're running your business on there. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight, even though it's very, very quick, into why the app is such a useful tool to be using as you take control of your business. And we've got one question coming from Helen. On the dashboard, when you click overdue invoice showing, it says I don't have the data for that filter. I'm not sure of the question, Helen. What I'll do is I'll show you. So if I go to my invoices here, these are all my unpaid invoices or open invoices. I can change at the top here. I can click on open and I can change, for example, the overdue ones and have a look what's in there. But if the information's in QuickBooks, it should show in the app as well. This is how you change the filters at the top. You can click where it says overdue or open or needs attention, and you can change each of those on there. If that hasn't really answered your question, you've also got the date here, and you can change that filtering on there, last 30 days, etc. But hopefully that has answered your question. If it hasn't, please get in touch with Paul, and I will be happy to answer after the webinar on there. Okay, so let's move on to our first topic today. We're going to be looking at connecting a bank feed. Now, a classic question I get and a classic pushback I get is, well, I like the idea of the bank feeds, but I'm really worried about it not being secure, or I like the idea of the bank feeds, but it seems a lot of work. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about why things have changed, and it is different to what it was in the past. In September of last year, the government brought in a piece of legislation called open banking. And what it really means is that connecting a bank to an app like QuickBooks is as quick and as easy as ever. What the legislation really allows for is that financial information can be shared electronically, securely, and efficiently. And those two words I think are really, really important on there. So from an efficiency point of view, there is now a standardized process within QuickBooks across all banks. So all the banks have released something called an API themselves. So HSBC, Barclays, all of the major banks and challenger banks, the majority of the banks are in QuickBooks. And whereas in the past, if you connected to QuickBooks, HSBC might have needed 2 weeks to be renewed every 2 weeks, Barclays every week, there is now a standardized process across all the banks, which makes a much better user experience, in my opinion, as well. And ultimately, you're going to get up-to-date information coming through. So no longer will you have to provide maybe Wren, for example, with your PDF statement from your online banking or an Excel spreadsheet. This is up-to-date information that's going to tell you an up-to-date snapshot of your business. And the bank feeds only have to be updated every 3 months, and it takes less than a minute. And the reason it is 3 months is that is a bank security piece. And they've asked us, they've asked all the major accounting software and all other companies that use financial information to do this as well. So I know a few of you have done on the polls already. Please let us know, have you ever connected your bank feed to QuickBooks, either through the app or not? Interesting to understand on there. What I'm going to do today is show you how to connect my bank account to the app, and I'll also show you in the products as well. It's really, really, really simple. So to connect a bank feed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the plus button here. Okay. No, I'm not. I'm going to go to the burger button here, and I'm going to go to shortcuts, and I'm going to click transactions. Now you already see when it loads that I already have my HSBC bank account in there. I've actually got 192 transactions I need to put into QuickBooks, but you can have multiple bank accounts here. And if you have the multi-currency feature switched on in QuickBooks, you can have multiple foreign accounts as well. So I'm going to click plus in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's going to bring me up some popular banks. As I mentioned, we've got pretty much all major banks and challenger banks in here. I'm going to bring up Monzo, because that's my second card that I use. And it's going to take me through to this. Now, it's going to come up with a consent page. Now, this is consent to connect for the 90 days, as I mentioned. And what it does is it allows Intuit QuickBooks to generate financial reports and other consolidated information until the 7th of October 2020. That's 90 days, at which point I'll have to renew it. Now, each bank is a slightly different way of connecting, but this depends on how the bank does it already. So when you log into, let's say, HSBC, there is going to be a way that you connect to that bank, and it's going to be the same across all software, QuickBooks, etc. So this is how Monzo do it. So in this particular case, it's going to take me, notice it's taking me directly through to Monzo. I'm no longer in QuickBooks. So this is the secure piece, a secure platform on here. Okay, for this particular example, it's asked me to put in my account number, but of course, again, each bank is going to be different, sort code and email address. In this particular example, it's going to ask me to, well, it's sent me a push notification through to my other phone, my Monzo account. But again, every bank is very, very different, and everyone's going to have a different way of doing it. Okay. And now it's going to connect to Monzo. Okay, so select the bank that I want. I'm going to put that bank account in a certain account. Now I've chosen already to have a Monzo current account in there. I could easily create another bank account. Let's say it was Barclays, for example. I could put Barclays Bank in there, and then I could actually add that account to it. In this particular case, I'm doing Monzo, and I'm going to connect it that way. And now it's refreshing, and it's going to bring through all of the transactions that I have in QuickBooks. Sorry, in my Monzo account into QuickBooks. Now it brings through up to 2 years worth of transactions. You can choose to have a month, a day, a week, 2 years, a year. It's really, really brilliant. And I can see I've got 39 transactions in there to bring into QuickBooks. And it is as simple as that. And as I mentioned, every bank's slightly different. But if you do connect it via the app, and this is a benefit of doing it, after 75 days, so 15 days before the renewal, a little exclamation mark will appear either here or here, depending on the bank, and it will ask you to renew that bank feed. And it's exactly the same way as connecting it. You just reconnect it that way, and it's really, really simple and easy to do. For full visibility, what I'll do is I'll take you through into the QuickBooks Online. Okay, so this is my QuickBooks Online license. You'll all recognize it as well, I'm sure. I go to banking on there. Now what you'll notice is we've just connected our Monzo account. It is already sitting there. So all the information I'm doing into my phone is immediately then going into QuickBooks as well online. Okay, and I've got all my transactions that are pulled through. I've got on there. I'm just going to show you roughly again. It's a very, very similar process. If I go to add account in the top right hand corner, I can add another bank. You'll notice it looks exactly the same as when doing it through the app. So in this particular case, if I did Monzo, for example, click Monzo, I can click continue. Now you're not going to see this, but it's exactly the same page. When I click agree here, a little window's popped up on my screen, and that is taking me directly through to Monzo. So as you can see, it's exactly the same process when connecting a bank feed through the app as it is through the software itself. And as I said, we've got pretty much all major banks and challenger banks in there. There are some banks that have yet to release their API, but give it a go, see if it's on there, and if not, get in touch with Paul or anyone from the Wren team, and we'll be able to help you out with that. So that was a really, really quick run through of the bank fees. Please let me know if you have any questions at all, and I'll be happy to answer. I think really, really important here is that efficiency piece and the fact that it's also very, very secure now as well. Once you've connected your bank feeds, there is an added feature called bank rules. Now, this is something that actually can't be done inside the app. It's got to be done inside the product, QuickBooks Online itself. But this is going to save you time as you set up automatic categorization of regular recurring transactions. So you will notice inside my feed, I've got things like entertaining on there. I've got golf lessons. I've got motor running expenses. I've got rent. These are things that are going to be coming up each month. I've got another motor running expense on there. As opposed to me having to go through and adding these individually, there's a way of having rules to auto-categorize and ultimately save us time when it comes to doing this at the end of the day, end of the week, end of the month. At the top here, you'll notice there's a rules section. Give that a click. Okay, and I've got different ones set up here already. I will choose that motor running expenses already. So what I'll choose here is I can create a rule, click new rule. Okay, and I can call this rule whatever I want it to be. So I'll use the Ford example. I could use car loan, for example. We'll use that one. And again, here I can set different, I can apply it to either money in or money out. So obviously it is money out. And again, I can choose the specific bank account as well. You'll notice Monzo and HSBC have come up there. And I can choose different conditions of the rule. You can decide whether the transaction meets all or any of these transactions. You can add up to 5 conditions. So as an example, I've got this, I can have description or bank text or amount. I can have contains or is exactly. A really good example of this is if I did the description, or I could do the amount, for example. And I believe it was this amount. We'll find out. And then I'm auto assigning it. So here I can, is it an expense? Is it a transfer? Is it a check? Well, it is an expense. And it actually is my motor running expenses on there. I can put a payee if I wanted to. I could put Ford, for example, in there. So I can add a new payee, for example. I can put Ford. Okay, save that. And there is an option here to automatically confirm transactions. So no longer will you have to check them. I'll show you what that means exactly. If I click save here and I add that rule, if I now go into my bank feed, you'll notice here it's come up and it's noticed there's a rule. So it started to recommend, it's recommending rules based upon what we've set up. Okay. And easily I could go in there and I'm happy with that and it will start auto-categorizing. But if I want to actually let it do it automatically, I could go into here, for example, and I could select automatically confirm transactions this rule applies to, and I click save. And if I go into my bank feed again, those transactions have now gone. If I go to my reviewed, they're there now. So every month, that rule that I've set up, it will automatically add those transactions to my QuickBooks books, and we're ready to go on there. And it's as simple as that. So, I wouldn't recommend doing the auto add feature until you're very comfortable with it, but you've got options there to do things such as, coffee or, rent or things like that. You've got lots and lots of options. And again, you can apply different rules for different bank accounts, and you can set up to 5 different rules. So it could be a bank amount, it could be a text. If I had DVLA, for example, I could easily select to add a rule there and do a very similar thing. Instead of doing the amount, I could do a description. So there's lots of options there. And again, that was quite quick, but hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into some of the things you can do. This is a major time-saving piece. I've got 189 transactions to go through. If I've got recurring transactions, this is a great way for me to get on top of my books on there. Okay. So again, that was quite quick, but let me know if you have any questions on there. I'd be happy to answer them as well. Okay, so we've covered the mobile app initially. We've looked into bank feeds, and we've looked into the bank rules as well. What I'm going to show you now is invoicing on the go. So I'm going to go back to the app. Okay. Now, invoicing on the go is something I really like sort of talking about it because it's a major efficiency saver within QuickBooks. Again, I'm a big fan of stats. A big stat that sort of sticks out for me is that UK businesses are currently chasing £50 billion of late payments. Now, obviously, that's a group amount. The average small business is owed at one time £6,142, and that money could be really, really critical. And as such, with everything that's going on at the moment, 25% of small businesses are facing imminent threat of insolvency. And if they can get paid faster, then they've got more chance of surviving. And this is going to be something that I think is really, really useful. If we go down to our invoices here, I've got £1,375 worth of unpaid invoices. That can make a huge difference to my business. Imagine if it was more than that on there. So we're going to look at the whole process today. I'm going to take you through creating an estimate, converting it to an invoice, sending the invoice, tracking the invoice, and receiving payment. Now, you may or may not create estimates, but this is I'm going to take you through the whole process. It's the same process of creating an estimate as it is an invoice, but I'll just show you what it looks like anyway. So we are going to go to the plus button at the bottom of the screen, and we're going to click estimate on there. Now, immediately what you'll see here is it's going to come up with a customer or a project asking me who the estimate's for. Now, I will tell you, outside of QuickBooks, I do part-time football coaching, and it's very regular for me to go into a client's house or meet them, and there will be a new client. So I can easily go in and I can add a new client. I could put in a first name or a last name. I could put an email address and their phone number. I can put as much information as I wanted to. And also this can be changed at a later date in either in the app or in the product. But all you need as a basic point really is just the first name and last name and any other information that's important on there. For the sake of the webinar, I'm going to choose a contact that I've already got in QuickBooks, and I'm going to choose Mr. Webinar Example. Okay. Now, QuickBooks has asked me for an estimate number. Then I can add my own estimate numbers. So if I've got my own estimate numbers, I can add them in, and the system will sequentially continue them thereafter. Or I could leave the estimate number blank, and the system will assign one automatically. And again, that will continue sequentially thereafter. So based upon the date, for example, I'll come up with a random number. I'm going to go with 0907. That's me, my estimate number. I can change the date from when that estimate was provided. In this case, I'm going to do today. And I can choose when I want it to expire. You could maybe do a week from now, etc. Really, really simple on there. In this particular example, I'm going to say that I gave the customer a quote. They were happy with it. And I can change the status from pending to accepted. I could also put closed or rejected in there. It's purely, some people use this purely as their own way of keeping track of their I suppose, estimates and invoices. But I can put in there that the date of the estimate was today. They've accepted it. I can put they accept it today, and I can put in that it was accepted by the client or whoever I want it to be in there. Next, I've got the option to create or to add a product or service. This is ultimately what is the service I'm providing? What am I selling? Again, this can be created inside QuickBooks Online, or it can be created inside the product. So I've got some products in there already, but again, similar to creating a customer, in the bottom right, you've got that plus button. I can on the go create a new product. So I can choose the name for it. I can choose the unit price. I can choose the tax code if I'm VAT registered, for example, and I can categorize it accordingly. You've got so much opportunity in there. Again, because it's a webinar, I'm going to choose an example here. So football coaching, that's already in there. Simply but you can see £25 an hour basically, and I can change that if I want to. So in this particular example, I could say the quote was for, I don't know, 5 hours of football coaching. So it's £125, and I add that. That's come into here again. I'm not VAT registered, but if I was, it would split it up into VAT as well. Okay. And we've got the subtotal there. I can put a message into the customer, and I can also put a note to myself, a memo, for example, to remind myself that actually, based upon our conversation, this may be the first of many sessions that I'm providing for them, basically. I'm going to click save, and that estimate is ready to go. Now, in the top right-hand corner, I click the 3 dots, and I've got options there to email that estimate. I could export it as a PDF. I can preview what it looks like as a PDF. I could even delete it if I wanted to as well. In this particular case, I'm happy not sending that estimate to the client, but I could do. I'm going to convert it to an invoice. So as I showed you before, creating an estimate and creating an invoice are very, very similar. I think this is quite important to note here. I recently had a couple of window cleaners come to my house to give me quotes. One window cleaner was brilliant. He was a really, really nice guy. He gave me a quote, a cheaper price than the other guy, but he went home. I imagine he probably got his secretary or one of his office staff to type up the estimate, send it to me second class in the post. By the time I got the estimate, I'd already forgotten about him, and I'd already gone with the other guy. Speed is really, really important here. So I think this is a really good way. If I have an estimate, if I click convert to invoice, all of the information from that estimate is now into the invoice. I don't have to recreate it again. You can see here, it's got the customer, it's got the date of the invoice, and it's got the product in there as well. So I'm going to put in, I'm going to put an invoice number in here that matches my estimate numbers. That's how I do it. Very similar to the estimate, very similar to the estimates. I could create my own, and the system will sequentially continue thereafter, or the system will create one for us as well. I can change anything on here. I can change the date of the invoice. I can change the net payment term if I want it a bit quicker. Okay, and that will change the due date, of course. I could even change this. I could, change the number of hours I want to be doing here. But all in all, it's really easy and ready to go. And once again, I can choose to put a message in for the customer, or a note to myself. And again, as a reminder, if I am VAT registered or I do have a tax code applied to it, this can be added. This particular example, I'm not VAT registered. So I'm going to click save now. So I've created that invoice, I've created the estimate, I've converted the invoice, and that invoice is ready to go. Again, all the information's in there. I've got the number, the date, the due date, the net payment terms. I can put a signature in there if I wanted to. But I'm gonna, and I've got options, other options as well in there. So I'm gonna click send invoice now. And you'll notice what comes up is an email on here. Now, I did have an email address associated with that customer. When you're creating new customers, you can either put an email address in there then, or you can create one on the go as well. Now, the subject line and the information in here has all been created inside QuickBooks Online, but I can change any of this. I could put some other information in there, regards Jacob, for example. And I've also got opportunities to customize his invoices. QuickBooks gives you lots of opportunities to customize as well. Yes, so Helen, your question, does it allow for your company branding on the invoice? It absolutely does, and I'll show you how to do that. I won't show you through the app, as I think it's better in the product itself, but I will show you that after. So thanks for the question. So I'm going to send this invoice. Invoice is ready to go. And I can see a nice big ticks come up under sent. Now I've actually connected that email address to this phone, so fingers crossed. I'm going to get an email. There we go. I'm going to show you what it looks like from the user's end. Now you'll notice here, Helen, this is particularly for you actually as well. You'll notice I've got my company logo in there. It's just a green ball. It hasn't really gone very far from that, but I've got all the information that I put in. That's come up on the client. This will look exactly the same on the computer as well. I've got the due amount on there. I've got the, all the information I could possibly want. If I had a message to the client, it would come up there as well. And I'm going to click review and pay. Okay, now that's going to take me through to QuickBooks. It says for the balance due, and I can, I put a little message in there, contact me if I'm not sure how to pay this. If I click view invoice and more information there, okay, and I click view invoice, this is going to trigger the system to know that I have actually viewed that invoice. So you'll see, Helen, this is an example. This is an invoice I created. It's nothing special. I apologize, but I've got all my information in there. I've got my address. I've got it how I want it to. There's a new version of QuickBooks apparently. I've got my logo in the top, but I can, brand this for my company and make it look exactly how I want it to look. Now, what I want to show you here, really important, is that if I go back into my invoices, I'm just going to take you back to the screen. I go to my invoices here. And I look through. Here we go. Bear with me. There we go. Right, that's a good time, but that's fine. You can now see that invoice has been viewed. So I could count on many, many, many hands the amount of times I've spoken to a customer and I said, hey, have you seen my invoice? That well, actually, I haven't received it. Well, actually, Mr. Webinar example, I can see you viewed it, and if you could pay it, that would be great. So that's really simple. I can see it's sent, I can see it's viewed, and I can check that at any point. So remember, we took ourselves back to the beginning here. I can look at my unpaid invoices. Okay, due within 30 days. There it is. Okay. I'm going to show you how to receive a payment in QuickBooks through the app now, but I will take us into the QuickBooks Online as well. If I go to that plus button, I go to invoice payment. I really, really like this now. So let's say, for example, I've collected, let's say I have like Go Cardless, for example, I collected direct debit, or I've got a cash machine, not a cash machine, a credit card machine, or I've just collected cash on the go. Okay, I can go to my customer here, and apologies about that, and I can go to Mr. Webinar example, and now you'll notice here that QuickBooks has identified the 2 invoices outstanding for this customer. Okay, so I can see the one I've raised, which actually is this £125. In this particular case, let's say, for example, if I add these 2 invoices together, the amount, I can click done, and it has assigned that £225 to those invoices. Okay, so I'll just, for the sake of this webinar, just show you if it was just that one. I could assign that £125 to this invoice here above, but I'm going to keep it on that one I've just raised. Again, this is a invoice payment. I can put a reference number in there. I can deposit it. So if it's cash, it's in my undeposited funds, and I've got all my information there, and it's saved and it's ready to go. Now, if I go to my invoices again, okay, I can see on here that invoice has now been, when it loads, apologies, my phone is very slow today. There we go. Right, it's been sent, it's been viewed, and it has been paid. And the only thing I haven't done is deposit that money. That £125 is now sitting in my undeposited funds until I raise a deposit on there. And again, if it's partially paid, that will come up. So if I receive, let's say I got £75 in cash up front, it would come up as partially paid. This is a really good example here as well, partially paid on there as well. So that's basically how invoicing on the go works. It's really, really simple to do. And I like the fact that you can just check on the go, is that invoice been paid? Has it not been paid, etc. What I'm going to show you is a few things in the product now as well. Okay, so again, remember we can use the QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks product in tandem. Okay, so we're back in QuickBooks Online. If I go to Helen, this is for you specifically. If I go to my settings in the top right-hand corner, I can go to custom form styles here. And this is where I have my standard invoice page. You can see, and I've got opportunities here to put some color on it, bring in some information. I can change the content. I can change the email messages in there. I've got lots and lots of opportunity there. I can obviously preview it at the end. You've got opportunities to create a brand new style for an invoice or an estimate or a sales receipt. So yes, you absolutely can bring your own logo and your own branding into QuickBooks as well. Okay, so that's really great. Another thing I want to show you is about receiving payments quicker is something called automated reminders. So if I go to the cog at the top here and I go to my account and settings, I've got a little option here in the sales tab, which is where I can put things like my standard net payment terms. I can customize, again, Helen, that's for you, where to customize, another way of doing it. You can put custom fields in there. There's, discounts, deposits, whatever it is that will make it more for, how I run my company. What I like here is these automated reminders. Now, this is something that QuickBooks have created to help you get paid quicker. So you can create up to 3 automatic reminders for new invoices. Okay, so I can create, like, for example, an invoice reminder for, let's say, 5 days before that invoice has been paid. Just saying, hey, we haven't received your payment yet. Let us know if you have any questions, that kind of thing. And I can even send myself an email as well on there. So I really like this. You can create another one, which maybe is 2 days after, for example, being like, you need to pay this invoice. And it's just going to help us get paid a lot quicker on there. So you can find that if you go to accounts settings and go to sales and then reminders as well. Something else I can do as well is if I go to invoices on here, which is another way of creating invoices, of course, exactly the same as doing it through the app. You're going to be looking at adding a customer email, etc. There are some payment options. One of them is with PayPal. This is a brand new integration with QuickBooks. Now, it doesn't cost anything, but those who use PayPal already will know there are certain fees associated with PayPal. Well, as part of the integration with QuickBooks, there is a 50% reduction on these fees. So usually with PayPal, if you're receiving payments through, you'd pay 2.9% and a 30p transaction fee. You're only paying 1.45 on there. So you see the difference in the rates. That's really, really great. And 50% of users who are using PayPal in QuickBooks were paid within the same week as they sent those invoices, and that's an average of 3 days. And I think that speed to payment is really, really crucial for customers at the moment. You can create a PayPal account really easily. It doesn't cost you anything. You can connect it to QuickBooks. You can ask your clients to pay you via PayPal, and it's a really easy way. And when you send your clients an invoice, there's going to be an option there to pay with PayPal. I send a lot of information, a lot of transactions through PayPal myself. I find it really, really easy, and it's also extremely secure as well. Okay, another option you've got as well, just quickly I'll show you. If you go to new invoice on here, is we've got GoCardless. We've got a relationship with GoCardless. This is for direct debits. So if you collect direct debits, again, GoCardless is a great app to use on there. If you'd like to as well, you can click on that and find out some more information as well. So that was a really quick run through. I mean, I always sort of say that it does sort of speed by. We've looked at an introduction into the mobile app. We've looked at connecting a bank feed. We looked at creating bank rules, how to invoice on the go, and then ultimately getting paid really quickly there with the automated reminders, the PayPal integration, and the GoCardless as well. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into some of the things you can do. All of these are absolutely massive. Good question come in. Can you link payments with iZettle? That is an integration that is just around the corner. Yes, you will be able to do that. So that's going to be really, really big. We've had a lot of interest in that, which is why it's coming. So keep an eye out for that as well. If you actually go to www.apps.com, which is what QuickBooks owns, you can see all of the integrations that we have within QuickBooks. And you want to look for, if you type in iZettle, you want to look for their actual integration. I believe it's just around the corner on there as well. Okay, so that's just, again, some of the things you can do. I really, really recommend you have a look into it. So if there are any questions, please do send them through. I'm happy to answer anything. I'm also happy to answer things slightly outside the webinar if you prefer. If you have any questions moving forward as well after the webinar, you can get in touch with Paul, get in touch with the team at Wren, and they'll be in touch on there. If you do have a second, I'd really appreciate if you went to just below the screen, went to the poll section, and at the bottom, I'd love to know, did you find the webinar useful? Would you attend more webinars in the future? And actually, are there any other topics you want to know about? So I put in there the cash flow planner that I mentioned, that 30-day and 90-day planner. And I've also put we have some new functionality around the construction industry schemes. If anyone here uses CIS, that could be useful. There's also an option as well for other, and you can write that in the chat box as well. We're really keen to sort of know, did you find the webinar useful? Would you attend more in the future? And what sort of things do you want to know about? We've got this partnership with Wren, and we're really keen to sort of help you guys. That's why we're here. And my role is to help their clients, and that's you guys. So really appreciate your time. If there are no more questions, then we'll end it here. But apologies it ran over by 2 minutes. I hope that was really useful, and I wish you all a great rest of the week.
Yeah,
And well on there. Thanks, Paul, and speak to you all soon. Cheers. Thanks, Helen.
thanks.